Hey everyone, and welcome to another video. This one's gonna be a little vulnerable. So earlier today on my Discord server, which is why that's visible, I mentioned that I'm a little bit burned out of Socially Distant, and I wasn't kidding. I opened the project today, and, I hit F5, like you normally do, to start up Unity, and I basically got as far as getting into the game, like once it loads up here, and hitting play, like that, and letting the game boot up, like that, and seeing that fade animation like that, and then getting into the terminal like this. And I, let it flash for a little bit, and Alt F4. I've been working on Socially Distant so much recently that right now I'm a little bit tired of it. And it's not that I don't like the game or anything like that, or that I don't want to finish it, or that I want to give up on it. It's not that. It's just that I want to work on something else for a bit. The problem is, I don't know what I want to work on. And I know that the one thing that I don't want to work on is nothing. I don't want to just take a break from programming, because what else do I do? I could sit all day playing Bejeweled, sure. I could sleep all day. There are so many other things I could do that just, to me, are not productive, because it's not writing code. Writing code is my creative expression. It's what I do. So I don't want to give up on programming for a bit. That's not the solution. It never has been. I just want to work on something that isn't Socially Distant. I want to work on a game, to be clear. I just don't know what. But the problem is, the reason I don't know what to work on is I'm very limited in what I can do. I'm a programmer, and I'd like to say that I'm a very skilled programmer. I've been doing it for over half my life, and I've been doing it blind the whole time, too. That's not something to take for granted, or to, discount. I'm good at what I do. But programming isn't everything in games, and the way that I look at it is building a house. First, you gotta build the foundation. You gotta, clear any foliage and whatnot to make room for the house. And then you gotta build something to support the house. And that is part of programming a game. That's kind of programming the game engine, if you think about it. And then you gotta go in and you gotta scaffold where the walls will be, and where all the rooms will be, and all the doors and windows and stuff like that. And that's game design, which is something that I do. I do design games. I'm not great at it, but it's something that I do, because I have to, for Socially Distant. Then, once you've, figured out the layout of the house, and where everything's gonna be as far as rooms and everything goes, you gotta run plumbing and electricity, because you gotta power things. That's programming, and that's what I do. And that's tying systems together, making sure that things are interactive and functional. That's putting the light switches in, the bathtub, the toilet, the kitchen sink, all the appliances. And then, after that, you have pretty much a completed house. But it's not a home yet. It's a great start, and it's definitely a house. You can live in it, but you probably don't want to, because all the walls are going to be white, or gray, or, some other color. There's going to be no furniture. You're not going to have, your sofa in your living room, or your bed, or your dressers, your desks, your dining room set, stuff like that. You're not going to have the little things that make a house a home. And that is the part that I struggle with. In the game dev analogy, that's art. visual art, modeling, texturing, sound design, composing music, all that stuff, animation. None of that is stuff that I can do, or really ever will be able to, because of my blindness. I mean, sure, you could make the case that I can do sound design. I'm not musically inclined. I never have been. But, maybe I can learn it. And maybe I could learn something like FL Studio. The problem is that in order for me to learn those tools, I need to see what I'm doing and be able to navigate their UIs. And I'm lucky with things like JetBrains Rider, because I've been using them forever. Long before I needed a screen reader, or any sort of text-to-speech to be able to navigate. Hell, in some cases, I've been using some of these programs before I've needed to zoom into the screen. And that's great, because starting out with Visual Studio, this is a familiar layout from what I used to use when I was 10 years old. I mean, it's a little bit different, but you have the same concepts. You have this big code editor that takes up most of the space, and it's got horizontal tabs along the top to represent the files that you have open. You have a menu bar, and then you have your main kind of toolbar where you can set things up to be run and stuff like that, and your debugger and stuff like that. And then generally you'll have some sort of console and, error list and stuff like that at the bottom, and then you're going to have some sort of file tree on the left, or on the right, as it were, in Visual Studio. These are very similar concepts that are the same across IDEs. I could open up Visual Studio Code and it would be the exact same layout. I could open up MonoDevelop and it will be the exact same layout. Xcode, it'll be the same layout. KDE, or KDevelop, it'll be the exact same layout. It's very easy to learn an IDE. And then there's game engines, which, if I wait for Unity to open up, I've also been using Unity and Unreal since the age of 14, and if you look at them at face value, you're going to see a lot of the same concepts. You're going to have some sort of menu bar at the top of the screen, of course. It's sort of different in Unreal 5 nowadays, but generally that's going to be there. You're going to have some way to play the game, some way to pause the game, and some way to do a one frame iteration. You're going to have some sort of, basic toolbar for accessing certain tools. You're going to have an inspector, almost always, to edit the selected object you have. You're going to have a scene hierarchy to select objects in the scene in this sort of way and to search for things. You're going to have typically a scene view where you can, move around the world, and Socially Distant there's really no use for the scene view other than when I'm doing UI, but it's there. And you're going to have a game view to preview what things are going to start off looking like, and when you actually play the game, this is what you're going to play it in. This is all standard stuff. And you're also going to have, your file tree, your content browser, and you're going to have some sort of console to tell you when things are going wrong. And in my case, this is a setup I've had since Trixel. You're going to have, or I'm going to have the audio mixer, and this is a very familiar layout for me because I set up audio in both Restitched and Socially Distant. So I'm very familiar with these tools, and I know that if I move to Unreal, it's going to be generally the same workflow. A little bit different, but generally things are going to be in the same place. Even Godot, as much as I don't like Godot as an engine because of its somewhat different workflow and how things work, and the fact that I don't like ABScript, it does have a lot of those same concepts. So transitioning between game engines and IDEs is completely fine for me. But, let's install a tool. I think it's in the Arch repositories, called LMMS. It's not FL Studio, but what it is a open source digital audio workstation that I have used. I've made music in this. I've never released it, but I have done stuff with it. And if I run it, what's this saying? Okay, it's complaining about config stuff. Okay, We boot it up, and it's got this kind of first time setup thing. I'll ignore it for now. Okay. It's gonna... Oh. It's complaining about something. Okay. You get this kind of layout, and this is a DAW. Now, I'm familiar with this layout. A little bit. But the problem with a DAW is that across many of them, across FL Studio and LMMS, the workflows are completely different. Like, in LMMS, I know that my instruments are all going to be on this left toolbar. One of the big issues with LMMS for accessibility right now that I'm noticing just now is... Actually, no, toolbars are working fine. Okay. Or not toolbars, tooltips. But, I can pull out an instrument and, I don't know, the Game Boy one. And put it in here, and boom, I have an instrument. That's great. And, I can double-click here, and now I have a piano roll. That's great. But, the issue is when you start getting into this kind of stuff here with the synthesizer controls. Many of these, a lot of the time, are going to be very skeuomorphic in design. Like, you have physical dials that, they look like physical dials you'd see on an actual synth. And that's fine if you're used to that kind of stuff, but I'm not. I'm a developer, and I'm blind. This stuff is not... I don't know what any of this does. I mean, I can probably assume that they do something useful, but I don't know what they do. The only thing that I know for certain what it does is this little piano down here. I can play the instrument with it. Or, if I had a MIDI keyboard hooked up, I could wire this into the MIDI keyboard and use that to play an instrument. But as far as navigating most of this user interface, it's just not something that's accessible to me. So, sound design and compositing music, putting aside the fact that I have no idea what I'm doing with creating music whatsoever, it's just not something I'm able to really learn. And let's say that I do learn a tool like LMMS. Well, great. I know LMMS. But then I have to go to FL Studio for some reason. I have to relearn that tool, and it's going to be completely and fundamentally different in terms of layout. Because FL Studio does not use this kind of block-style tracker system. It uses a completely different system. And most of this knowledge from LMMS does not transfer. And then there's the other issues with accessibility in general in FL Studio, where when you hover over something, you don't get a tooltip next to your mouse cursor. It comes up in the top left corner of the screen. And, most of the time, that's not visible to me. And if I try to pan over to that, whatever I was hovering over, I'm no longer hovering over. So that's a problem. Now, that leaves me, with... Oh god, why did I save? I don't want to save. Also, custom file dialog? No, go away. Stop doing that, people. Use the System 1. Older Linux app, can't really complain there, but still. That leaves me with something else that I need to do, or need to learn how to do with art. Graphic design. I'm blind. No. Okay, 3D modeling. I'm blind. No. In fact, 3D modeling is even worse than graphic design, because with 3D modeling, you have a perspective view, and I know this from Restitch. Minutes of that will make me want to puke. Because I'm zoomed into the screen, and it messes with my head, and it's not something I can do. So, all that to say, I'm not an artist, and I can't be an artist. And that really limits a lot of what I can do with game development and game design, because I have to design things around what I'm able to do. And, well, you might say, well, Richie, You can't do those things, but other people can. Yeah, I'm aware. Finding people isn't hard. It's paying them that is. One of the things that made me leave Trixel is that, well, as much as I liked working on Restitch for a very long time, it was a passion project for me, it doesn't pay the bills. I'm paying out of pocket to run Socially Distant, even though it's under development and, there's not much to run. I paid out of pocket for the Steam developer fee, and I pay out of pocket to run the game's website. And I pay out of pocket to buy the hardware that I used to develop the game on. This stuff is an investment. And unfortunately, I just don't have the ability to hire someone to help me. It's just not possible. And that's the same position that Trixel is in right now. Everyone on that team is an independent contractor, and although they do bring in funds from Trixel Plus and from merch sales, it's nowhere near enough to actually pay employees. So Trixel just doesn't have employees. And I left because that was no longer sustainable for me. I could not do it. So what I'm trying to say is I don't want to be Trixel. I don't want people to work for free under me. That's not what I want to do. Even if people offer to, I don't want to do that. So, yeah. Finding an artist, or even another programmer to take the burden off me, is just not a thing I can do. And that ultimately leads me to why I'm kind of burned out of Socially Distant. It's not just the fact that I don't want to work on the game for a bit. I've been working really hard on it, and that's nothing to scoff at. I've done a lot. The game is almost becoming a game, and I'm really proud of myself for that. But I'm running out of things that I can do with it on my own. I won't be able to make most of the story, in the sense that NPCs, they need profile pictures. There are mechanics that need screenshots and stuff like that for you to scan and find information in. How do I make those screenshots, right? And, the game's gonna need music, because right now it's mostly a silent void. And there are sound effects, but I had to license them, and I can't afford to keep doing that. It's going to eventually need dialogue. Like, actual spoken dialogue. And say what you will about AI-generated art, my code of ethics for that is do not ship that in production. What you do is you would use the AI art to basically generate temporary assets that you intend on replacing. Because if you ship it in production, then you end up with the Grand Theft Auto Definitive Edition. And we all know what happened there. I don't want that. And I definitely don't want that for my first ever game. And putting that aside, the legality of shipping AI-generated art is questionable. Because who owns it? I mean, sure, I was the one who wrote the prompt, but I didn't write the model. And it's not like that picture or that song or that instrument or that texture or that font or anything like that, or even that story that it wrote, is wholly original. Because if you think about how AI works, it requires itself to be trained on existing data made by other people. And so you end up with this amalgamation of, sure, the creation may seem unique to you, but it originated from lots of other people's work, and it's just not... You don't know who owns it. Everyone could own it, for that matter, and that may not include you. And so, there's a certain amount of risk involved in shipping that stuff in production, so I think it's only suitable for temporary assets. And so it just moves the problem to later. I need to replace those assets. That's the problem that I'm running into. And that is also what's stopping me from making new games. Because I can graybox them, sure, but then what? Then what? It just moves the problem to 2 games instead of 1. Or 3 games instead of 2. Or 4 games instead of 3. And maybe I get lucky. Maybe someone looks at my prototype and goes, hey, I'm a game publisher. Or I work for a game publisher. This looks cool. We're gonna fund you. But that's getting lucky. Games like Minecraft, Stardew Valley, Terraria, I'm trying to think of others. All of those games are the exception to the rule. The reality is, especially with your first ever game, you are just not going to get the amount of success that most people dream about. There's a reason it's a dream. It's because it's rare. It's an accomplishment. And it's not always going to happen. And I've always been prepared for that reality, because it is reality, that Socially Distant will not, or at least has a 0.00001% chance of becoming something like Minecraft, like Terraria, like Uplink, or Hacknet, or Orwell, getting decent amounts of success to where that I can start a team. I can only dream that that happens, but hope for the best, prepare for the worst, is what I'm trying to say. It might not happen, and I've got to operate as if it's not going to happen. Which means going into debt to work on the game, it's not really a thing that is realistically feasible. So I don't know what to do. I'm really stuck, and the only thing that I can say is the latest devlog just went out of early access yesterday. I forgot to announce it, but if you guys want to check that out and see how far the game's gotten, it's gotten decently far. One of the mechanics is mostly complete. I even showed it on stream, and by the way, I did fix the bug that caused the game to crash on stream the other day. That's been fixed. But, you know, there's at least somewhat of a prototype there, and I don't know what to do next with it. But, you know, hey, at least I made it this far. Anyway, I just wanted to make this video to talk about what's going through my head right now, and why I'm a little bit burned out, and, well, what do we do? Anyway, I've been Michael, even though everyone calls me Richie. Hope you enjoyed the video, hope you learned something. If you like what I do and want to support me, especially right now, because I really do need it, there's a Patreon link in the description below, and I hope you enjoyed the video. I already said that, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching.